The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the ACM SIGUCCS webinar, Small Carrots, No Sticks. I'm Lori Fox. I'm the chair of SIGUCCS and I am your host and moderator for the webinar today. The first thing we're going to do is take care of some reminders. Everyone is muted by default. The session is being recorded. We will put the recording on YouTube next week for viewing. If you'd like to ask a question, you can ask it in the questions area. That makes a lot of sense. And if you have a microphone and would like to talk, you can raise your hand to be unmuted. If everyone could either raise your hand or say hello in the question box, that just helps me feel confident that you can hear me. Thank you, Dave, for following directions. And Ella, good afternoon. I do want to just let you know that we're having an electrical storm here. And just before the webinar started, we lost power on campus, which is going to make my phone ring crazy. So far, I know of 4 classrooms where the bulbs blew. So that's how my day is going. But so if anything happens, I will restart the webinar and we'll be back in on the same link. So hopefully by saying that, I just made things go smoothly. I'm happy to remind you that the SIGUCCS 2019 conference is approaching. There is more information available on the website. Just in the last few days, the registration information is available. I know that the hotel links are available, and soon you should start to see information about the pre-conference seminars if they're not there already. So keep an eye on the website. Things are rapidly changing this time of year as the conference committee works on organizing a great event for us. We're also in the 4th month of our SIGUCCS book club. You can read with us. The book we're reading this month is EQ Applied, and we will have discussion in our Slack channel at the end of the month and hopefully a hangout too. Our May book is The Phoenix Project. Now, May is a pretty busy month for most of us in higher ed. I'm happy to say that The Phoenix Project is a short book, shorter than we've read before. So I'm looking forward to that book as well. You may have seen a notification recently that it is time to participate in the SIGUCCS Awards. There are opportunities for you to recognize your colleagues. Oops. And I went past the link, but anyway, if you go to our website, you can nominate people for the SIGUCCS Awards or nominate yourself for Communication Award. We're chugging right along with a SIGUCCS webinar every month. We've got 3 great ones coming up about student training, CATS, and developing a culture of care. And as you may know, these webinars are typically replays from popular, well-received presentations from the SIGUCCS conference. You know what? I am not showing my PowerPoint presentation, am I?
No.
No, look at that. So let me back up a little bit. Sorry about that. Here we go. So I did say the webinar reminders. Here's the URL for the conference and information about the book club. And there's the awards link. See, that was a bonus because I clicked past it. So now we're all caught up. And the upcoming webinars, which all the information is available on our website. Okay, so I encourage everyone to join SIGUCCS, especially if you're planning to attend the annual conference. It is the way to get conference discounts. It also drops the cost of the pre-conference seminars and gives you access to the digital library and the SIGUCCS mentoring program. I'd like to encourage you to connect with SIGUCCS. We stay pretty well connected beyond the conference. The link there will get you to all of the information, but we have an email list, Facebook community, Twitter, and my current favorite, the SIGUCCS Slack. The channels that are most popular include the book club, because we're in there talking about the books as we read them. But also you can find more information about the conference. We have an active productivity community. And every Wednesday we have weekly challenge questions. Okay, now I'm going to turn it over, to Jason. Okay, Jason, you should have control now.
Okay, thank you, Lori.
And let's make sure you're displaying.
Yeah, I think so.
Can you
Okay.
see the
Yeah, that
presentation?
looks good. Okay, so I'm going to mute myself and turn it over to our wonderful presenters. And here we go.
Okay, thank you for joining us, everybody, for our presentation of Small Carrots, No Sticks. Subtitle being Engaging Campus Business Partners in the Design and Deployment of Enterprise Services in a Decentralized Campus Environment.
Jason or Kenneth,
Yes.
can you
Yeah.
shrink down, your GoToWebinar console? I can see it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's oh, perfect. Okay, there we go.
All right, is it visible? Where you go?
Is it better? Is that better, Lori?
It is good now. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
So my name is Jason Glenn. I'm a systems analyst here at the University Libraries at Carnegie Mellon University. You'll see a lovely picture of our beautiful main library building, and that's where we call home, and we know and love. Like I said, I'm a systems analyst, but really my responsibilities from day to day are managing the IT service catalog for the university libraries. And I also am heavily involved in helping to implement both projects and services. And within the context of this presentation, I was responsible for primarily the technical side of a major enterprise-wide campus implementation of a research information management system. And so I will pass it off to my partner, Ken, so he can introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Jason said, my name is Ken Rose. I'm a project manager here at Carnegie Mellon University. Next month, I will be starting my 30th year here at Carnegie Mellon. I'm approaching 2 years as project manager. In the past, I've been basically your garden variety systems administrator. I started off as a tech, then a systems admin, mainly Windows Server and Linux, and now I'm a project manager. So what that means is I provide project management services for small and medium projects with increasing complexity across the university. This includes taking projects from the original concept through final implementation using structured project management methodologies. In the context of this presentation, I was the project manager for our integrated library system rollout. And with that being said, I want to pass it back to Jason and we will move forward.
So I'd like to give you an overview of sort of things we'll be talking about today. First, we'll go over the main overarching challenge that we had for these projects, give you some background and context about the campus environment here at Carnegie Mellon, because I think that context will help to sort of frame some of the challenges that we ran into. And then we'll go over the projects themselves and sort of summarize what we had to do, talk about some lessons learned, and then we will hopefully be able to answer any questions that you have. So the challenge that we were faced with is during a single academic year, we had to implement two major IT service offerings. So Ken and I are both a member of the Digital Strategies department here at the CMU libraries. Digital strategy is sort of analogous to what some might call library IT or LIT at other institutions. Mm-hmm. We had to implement a replacement for our ILS, Integrated Library System, often known as the library cataloging system. And we also had to implement a new enterprise research information management system. So both of these efforts were driven by the strategic plan for the university libraries. And the recommendation for the strategic plan was to create a 21st century library that serves as the cornerstone of world-class research and scholarship. And you'll see the one bullet point that's highlighted there saying that we wanted to steward the evolving scholarly record and champion new forms of scholarly communication. So the first thing that we wanted to do to achieve this goal was to implement the new library catalog. So the library catalog was basically divided into two separate pieces. So we had first the library services piece, and the new system on the library services piece was a tool developed by Ex Libris called ALMA. And by library services, what we're really talking about is sort of the back-end interface for staff to enter information about the library catalog properties. So in addition to that library services piece, we have the unified discovery layer. And this is what you think of as the sort of front end of the catalog that the public interacts with to search through and get information about the different properties that the library has. This piece of the ILS was implemented using a product called Primo, which is also an Ex Libris product. So Alma and Primo were to replace these two systems called Symphony and Summon, which work together in a similar way. Symphony being the library services platform and Summon being the discovery layer piece. It turns out that that Summon, ProQuest, which developed Summon, was eventually acquired by Ex Libris, so it was really technically an Ex Libris product as well. But we felt that Alma Primo, that combination, really served the library's needs more effectively. So the second project that we had to implement was really driven by a partnership that CMU entered into with this company called Decentralized. So Decentralized is really a portfolio company that is responsible for developing a lot of tools to help manage, publish, and communicate all scholarly activity. Symplectic Elements is a portfolio company of digital science, and Symplectic Elements develops a tool called Symplectic Elements, which is the enterprise research information system that I spoke about in the intro. And the purpose of Element is to capture, analyze, showcase, and report all scholarly activities throughout the university. And so to kind of help you understand why, number one, why elements was important, and number two, why we had different challenges when implementing both of these projects. It helps to get a little bit of background on CMU as an institution and sort of the structure of CMU. So a brief history of CMU, it was founded in 1900 by the industrialist Andrew Carnegie as Carnegie Tech. Over the course of time, the additional schools were added, including the Graduate School of Industrial Administration, which is now known as the Tepper School of Business. In 1967, there was a merger between Carnegie Tech and the Mellon Institute to form what is now known as Carnegie Mellon University. And over time, they added additional colleges, such as the Higham College of Urban and Public Affairs and the world-renowned School of Computer Science here at CMU. And so the fact that CMU came together in this way, you can really think of it oftentimes more as a confederation of colleges, more so than a unified university. I mean, it is unified in that there is a central administration, but a lot of the colleges still sort of maintain a certain level of autonomy and a certain sort of a siloed nature due to the history of the way that Carnegie Mellon University came to be. And so I went around and got some quotes from people who work on campus about the sort of the nature of campus. And I've removed all the names to protect the innocent. But you can see that these quotes are sort of ordered in order of most politically correct to least. If you're the standard line is that CMU is a highly decentralized environment, but I kind of like that last quote that says that the only thing that's consistently consistent across campus is the inconsistency. I think that perfectly summarizes sort of the CMU environment. And so there are some pros and cons to this type of environment, right? One pro is, and I think one strength that has grown out of having this type of environment is CMU is a very innovative place. And because there are not these, because there's not this centralized control, it actually kind of breaks down barriers in a way, because if I am a faculty member or a researcher in a particular college or department, and I have a research interest, I can go and collaborate, with someone in another discipline, because there's not necessarily anybody telling me that I can't do that. And so I think that fosters sort of this interdisciplinary academic collaboration and innovation. And that's one of the great things about the fact that we do live in sort of this decentralized environment. But because it is decentralized and it is sort of siloed, from an administrative standpoint, there are some cons to that. There are a lack of shared processes across colleges and divisions and even departments within colleges sometimes. There's often a duplication of effort because everybody is kind of doing their own thing. And so a lot of things end up getting that maybe should be centralized aren't. People are develop their own systems and processes locally. They're often, and because people develop these local systems and processes, sometimes there are interoperability issues when it comes to systems and incompatibility issues when it comes to data structures. And of course, there are sometimes barriers to administrative information sharing, because since it is sort of a siloed, decentralized environment, people tend to take ownership over their space of the world, and there may be sort of these barriers to really sharing information in a way that's ideal at times. And so as a result, you find yourself in an environment where if you're trying to implement an enterprise-wide solution, then you have small carrots in the sense that you can try to incentivize your business partners to work with you, but you don't always have any sticks, to really force anybody to do something. So that was the inspiration for the title of our presentation: Small Carrots, No Sticks. And so I'll pass the baton to my colleague Ken, and he will get into summarizing the projects themselves.
Okay, thanks, Jason. So like I mentioned earlier, I was a project manager for the migration of our integrated library system from the previous system to the system that we migrated to, Alma and Primo. And to talk about that, I want to take you back to before we rolled the product out. So we had been on our previous system since around 1995. And in the intervening decades, there have been improvements in library systems that would help improve workflow efficiency, streamline processes, and actually make it easier to more seamlessly integrate with third-party products and applications. So the way the process went is we sent out requests for proposals. I'm sure some people have been working on different projects. You may have done this yourselves. And we heard back from 3 different vendors, and after reviewing these proposals, we settled on 2 vendors to invite the campus to do all-day demos of their product. After going through and deliberating with the project team, we recommended that we migrate from our previous system to Alma and Primo Ex Libris products. Right here is just a quick overview of the migration schedule. Important dates to look at here are the project kickoff date and the scheduled go-live date. So we kicked off the project on or around October 3rd, and we were scheduled to go live March 13th. And this was 2018. So as part of the migration process, we had to extract data from our previous system and provide it to Ex Libris so they could load it into our what would soon become our production server in Alma. So we did the first test load in December, had some issues with that. So we did a second test load in January, and the results were much more improved. The acquisitions data, which were point of problems in the first data load, were much improved in the second one. So we made the system available for faculty, library faculty and staff to test. And then we were just moving forward towards the cutoff date that you saw on the previous slide. So because of different issues that we had with the acquisitions and the acquisitions data particularly, we did a phased in go live. So a week after your original go live date, we went live with public facing services, fulfillment, known to most people in the library world as circulation, and then Primo, which is the public facing library catalog. Ex Libris came on campus, worked with our developers on some of the issues that we were having with our acquisitions data, and we eventually, a couple weeks later, went live with acquisitions, and we were fully live, fully migrated from our previous system to Alma and Primo. And with that, I'll pass it back to Jason for his project.
Okay, so the Elements project was a little different in the sense that with the ILS implementation, we were going from a currently established ILS and migrating to a new ILS. The Element system was a new implementation from the ground up, something that had not existed before. And so to give you a quick summary, the purpose of the system was to capture, analyze, and showcase leading research across campus and to provide accurate, timely, and a holistic picture of the institution's research. As I mentioned before, the environment at CMU, very decentralized, very siloed, and so it was difficult for higher level management to really get a top-down view of all of the research outputs, all of the academic activity that was happening at CMU. And so the purpose of Elements was to give people at the president's level, the provost level, the ability to kind of look at everything across campus. And so in order to do this, we needed to have multiple data sources. We needed a publication data source, teaching data, grants data, research data. Also, we had to have data coming in from Workday, our HR system, in order to create the individual accounts on the system for each one of the faculty and research staff to interact with and to update their personal information. So the strategy that we used to implement this system, first we formed a product launch team, of course, and then we devised a rollout plan college by college, because the different colleges are so different and have their own individual history and own processes. We really had to individualize the plans to roll out the system campus-wide. We secured support from the provost office, and eventually the provost decided that Elements would be the official source of information for all annual review processes for faculty, as well as a main data source for promotion and tenure types of processes. So for the annual review process, the idea would be that if information that was needed to go into the annual review was not in Elements, then it would not be considered, at least not in the same way as the information that was in Elements.
That's a little bit of carrot and stick.
Yeah. So that support from the provost's office was key. We also needed the support from Office of Institutional Research and, of course, the different college deans. We also had to coordinate with business partners, both internal and external. So we were gathering data from different data sources and different systems around campus, as I mentioned before, and we also had to interact and coordinate with our external business partner, which in this case was the company Symplectic Elements, because our development partnership that we entered into with Elements was really meant to be a mutually beneficial relationship. So Symplectic is a UK-based company, and many of their clients at the time that we came on board were institutions in the UK or elsewhere overseas. Now, the processes and procedures that they use for tracking academic outputs, for promotion and tenure, for annual reviews are a lot different than the processes and procedures that are common for US institutions. And so we saw their product could be useful, and they were trying to enter the US market. And so there was some synergy in that relationship, in that we could use their product, we could try to get new features onto their development schedule that we thought would be beneficial for us. But we also were working on the assumption that it wasn't just selfish, but any new features that would be beneficial to us would most likely also provide some value to other institutions in the US. And so Symplectic would get that benefit from the relationship. So there was a lot of coordination with Symplectic as well. So just to kind of review the different data sources, we had to get profile data, and that was from our HR system. So we had to coordinate with human resources to get that data, because each faculty member and researcher has an account on the system, and they have a profile where they can either enter in manually information that they would like to be included in their profile, or it can be harvested from other sources that I'll touch on later. But in order to initially populate that user profile, we use data from our HR system. We also pulled in grants data because the idea is that eventually we want to be able to track all of the grant dollars to outputs of that research. We want to be able to track that money all the way through from beginning to end. And so the grants data was very important. We also wanted to include teaching data. So courses taught by faculty and other interests, and keep track of that because that was important in the annual review process. Not only were publications important, but also the teaching activities were important. And of course, we wanted to capture the publication data. And so this data was collected multiple ways. So either a user of the system could enter manually the information about the work that they had published, but also they could enter researcher IDs such as ORCID and enter that into the Element system, and the system would then go out and using that researcher ID to harvest publication data about that researcher from external publication databases. So we conducted 2 pilots of the system. The first pilot was in the university libraries itself. So all librarians at CMU have faculty status. And so they go through an annual review process just like any other faculty member on campus. And since this new system was being launched by the university libraries, we decided it was good to eat our own dog food, right? We wanted to demonstrate that this tool could be used for annual reviews, so we used this to conduct the librarians' annual reviews. In addition to this pilot, we did a pilot with the Information Science Department, which is a smaller department in the College of Humanities and Social Science. And the size of the faculty was just manageable enough that we could glean some valuable lessons from their experiences, and then use that information both from the Information Science pilot and the University Libraries pilot to sort of shape the rollout plan and to design how the system would work in the rest of the colleges and departments across campus. And so of course, we documented the lessons learned, we refined the rollout strategy, and then we engaged with the vendor to help shape the future development roadmap for Elements. So that gives you a summary of the different projects. I'm going to pass it back to Ken so he can discuss some of the lessons learned.
Thanks, Jason. And yes, there were some lessons learned indeed. So I will start with this. Identify internal and external business partners, okay? If I was to redo this slide, it would say identify internal and external business partners as early in the process as possible. And you may be thinking, well, duh, that's obvious, but sometimes things can be so obvious you may take them for granted and may fall behind in that aspect. So what you need to do is identify the actual people you will need to engage with. I mean, I'm not just talking about departments or different vendors, but you need to get to the specific person who's responsible. For example, if it's a data feed, you need to know who's responsible for the data feeds. If it's something with networking, you have to discuss it with the person who's responsible for networking. You want to share vendor documentation and requirements with your business partners as early as possible, because certain systems have certain requirements. Things have to be in particular formats, or else you're going to have problems. So identify who these partners are as early as possible, start engaging with them, and they'll appreciate it as well, because people like to be given a heads up when when things are happening and you have strict go live dates and timelines. So speaking of timelines, what you want to do with your business partners is align your project timelines, because you may think that your people are going to drop doing what they're doing to help you with your project, but they have their own projects, they have their own priorities. So align your timelines, make sure you're on the same page so that you can meet your milestones when you need to meet them, and you don't put your go live date or your release or rollout date in jeopardy. Engage with your third-party vendors. In a system like ours, we touch a lot of different systems. Like our ILS will touch Relay and Iliad interlibrary loan systems. We connect to various electronic databases. You want to talk to them, let them know what system you're moving to, and get them on board with whatever things you need to get worked out so that you're not putting your go live date in jeopardy. And Jason mentioned this, you want to coordinate with your data providers. This is sort of tied into what I said before, but one of the things you need to do is make sure that you are very clearly identifying the division of labor between you and your business partners. So if you're working with a data provider for data that's required in your system and it needs to be in a certain format, decide and define who's going to do this work. You may assume that the data provider is going to perform this work and put it in the format that's needed by your system, but they may not have the bandwidth to do that. So it may be on your team, this is just an example, it may be the responsibility of your team to go ahead and do this work and get things ready as per the system's requirements. So clearly define the division of labor between yourself and your business partners. Another thing you want to do is manage the scope of your integrations. What things do you absolutely need in order to go live by the go live date, and what things can be integrated after the go live date? You can get caught up in wanting to do everything at once. You know, you want to get all your integrations done. When the go live date comes, you want to be able to do everything. You don't want to do that because, as you all know, and I'm sure you've all worked on projects that have gone off the rails to some degree, you want to keep it realistic. You want to make sure you don't put your go live date in jeopardy. So manage the scope of your integrations. Do the things that you need to do in order to go live with your current, with your new system. Design a risk management plan. And then what I mean by this, if any of you are project managers, you'll know what this means. You want to sort of anticipate things that may go wrong, because if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Just believe me when I tell you. So you sort of anticipate things that may happen, and you put in contingency plans. You sort of like put in plans to mitigate whatever damage or problems can arise from something going left on you. So for example, let's say you have a project team, and for whatever reason, one of your project team members moves on to a different job, or God forbid gets sick, or is for whatever reason not available. Well, what we did as part of our risk management plan, we created redundancy on our project team. So we had multiple representatives of the circulation fulfillment department. We had multiple representatives for our discovery layer. We had multiple representatives for our interlibrary loan department. So in the case of, and actually on our project team, somebody did move on to a different position at a different institution. But since we had that redundancy built in, since we anticipated that possibility, we were able to keep going and really not miss that much of a step with that person moving on. So with that being said, you also want to keep in mind some perspective about what's going on here. And this is what I mean by that. All the work we do is very important. I mean, you guys on this call, on this webinar, you do lots of important work. People that go to SIGUCCS are doing great things for other institutions. But keep some perspective. Like, hopefully nobody's going to die if something goes wrong. You don't want to lose sleep. You don't want to find yourself aging rapidly because you're so stressed out. And when I say lessons learned, I mean we had some lessons learned. And I want to show you what I mean. We took a snapshot of some of the project team members before we did the project, and then we'll show you the after picture. So here's the before picture. So there's me in the front. I'm a lot younger than I look now. There's Jason behind me. And then here's how we look now. So we aged rapidly because we were so stressed, but these lessons learned, keep them in mind, and you may be able to avoid the rapid aging.
That's the best thing I've seen all day.
So with that being said, we will open it up to any questions anyone may have. And first of all, I meant to say thank you all for joining us. Thank you for listening. And I hope there's something here for you to take back. Lori?
Okay, so I'm checking. Christina also says best thing she's seen all day. I think one takeaway that I really like is the support that you got from the provost's office. Isn't that just something that really makes a project
Yeah,
move?
that support was hard won. I think that you know, the dean had a certain vision of how the library, because traditionally the library was thought of as, you know, the place where you store the books.
Right.
But Dean really had a vision that the library is really the center of teaching and learning. And so I think that, you know, my hat's off to the dean to really pushing that idea forward, and, you know, and the provosts for buying into that understanding of what the library is, what the new 21st century library is. And it really did make all the difference.
Absolutely. So I'm not seeing any other questions. Does anybody have any other questions for our presenters? Oh, Alan says great presentation, and I have to agree. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for sharing your experience with us. As I said, this will be available early next week, actually probably Tuesday next week, on our YouTube channel. And I hope to see everyone next month at our next webinar, if not sooner.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.
You too.
You too.
Thanks, everyone.